Hi again, everybody, and welcome to this episode of On and Off the Radar. I'm Chief Meteorologist Andy McCrae.
And I'm meteorologist Anthony Peoples. We appreciate you being with us. What an active week or two.
Yeah, no kidding. We've been doing this for a couple of months now. I feel like there was an episode or two where the weather was kind of quiet, not a lot to talk about. And then we've had episodes like today when we just had a blizzard and a record high not that long ago. Now it's going to be super warm again this weekend, so plenty to talk about. Obviously, top of mind, the blizzard that we had earlier in the week. It was a legitimate blizzard too. I was out that Sunday night. I came in and worked Sunday night driving home. It was pretty bad. And then you came into work early Monday morning.
And you know, I allowed myself a lot of extra time that morning because I didn't know just how bad it was going to be. And luckily for me, the time in the morning that I come in, I was coming in at 1:30 to 2 o'clock. There's not much traffic on the roadways. So you have a little bit more freedom on the roadways. But it was legitimate. Wind, snow, blowing snow, and the snow even overachieved.
Yeah, the accumulations, that was pretty impressive. We'll show you that here in just a little bit. So I think I eventually drove home Sunday night. It was maybe 11:30 or something like that. And I was definitely sliding all around. But then, a little bit before I got home, I stopped and I got some Taco Bell that night. They were open. I was very glad about it. Clearly it wasn't the most healthy thing to eat, but on a Sunday night with a blizzard going on, after kind of a long day of work getting ready for the blizzard, I treated myself.
It was good comfort food.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. And it was a good night for it too because the snow was just blowing around. So again, it was a blizzard warning and we ended up with a lot of snow in the Quad Cities. And even after this blizzard warning expired, they ended up going with winter weather advisories for a while longer because the blowing snow, it just kind of kept going. And the snow totals, again, pretty impressive. It had been a while since we had snow like this, but these were the numbers from Sunday night into Monday.
Yeah, the official total, the big total in the Quad Cities was Davenport was 7.8. Moline picked up 7, and I went out and measured a couple of times here in downtown Rock Island. When I first measured around 4 o'clock, there was about 4.5 inches out there. But then by 6 o'clock, we were up to over 6, and probably about 7 inches or so in downtown Rock Island.
This was one of those snows in the Quad Cities. Every once in a while you'll get one where it snows a whole lot more in Bettendorf or Davenport or Rock Island or Moline. I think all of us had right around that 7 to 8 inches in the Quad Cities. So it was the biggest snow we'd had in quite a while. It had been a while since it looked like that. And now finally, a little bit of an update to our snow for the season to date so far. Not sure if we're going to make it up to that average of 36.1, but at least with this snow, we ended up getting a lot closer to that normal number.
That's right, 3/4 of the way there, 27.7 inches. And Andy, go out on a limb. Are we going to have any more measurable snow this season? I mean, it's possible in April we've had measurable snow.
I feel like most years I would say yes, but the amount of times that we've had a trace of snow in Moline this year, maybe I'll just say, go out on a limb and say we'll just get another trace, because Anthony and I were talking before we started recording this episode. There have been many times this season where Davenport is measured in at 0.2 or a half an inch or 0.4, 4/10 of an inch. And on each of those times, a handful of times, Moline has just had a trace. It's just kind of the way it's gone this year.
And a trace, it doesn't add up. You might see it might cover part of your grass, it might cover part of your sidewalk or your carport, but it doesn't add anything to that total.
Yeah, even if you get 50 traces of snow on 50 different days, your total for the season technically would still be a trace at that point in time. This was a snow too that wasn't all that easy to measure in some of these places because the wind was blowing it around. I mean, literally, there might have been parts of the yard that only had a little dusting of snow. And then other parts of the yard, there were some 2 and 3 feet snow drifts around parts of the area this week.
Definitely so. So, whenever you have the blizzard conditions like we saw Sunday night, Monday morning, it's very easy that these snow totals could have actually been higher, or it could have been a little bit lower. And, 5.5 was the average after the wind-blown snow there in Silvis.
Yeah, and Galena 6.5. You can see Moline and Rock Island there at 7. Lanark 8.5 inches of snow. Those are some totals from the Illinois side of the Mississippi River, and well, we have a bunch from Iowa as well. And Loudon ended up, we should have updated this one. Loudon, I think, ended up, last I saw, was 9 inches of snow.
I think that was
there's something about Loudon in Cedar County. They often end up with the heaviest snow total. They have a good weather co-op observer there. He's been doing it for a long time. But Loudon often ends up kind of close to the top of the list. And again, this was taken, partially through the storm, but as Davenport was on its way to 7.8 inches, and you can see Muscatine, and again, a lot of these totals ended up a little bit more than that. All right, so we've mentioned the word blizzard. A lot of people think, well, you must have to have a whole lot of snow. That's actually not part of the definition for a blizzard warning.
No, a blizzard is basically the blowing and drifting. I mean, the falling snow definitely contributes to those blizzard conditions, but it could just be a few inches or an inch or so of snow, but it's that visibility being reduced to a quarter mile for several hours, 3 hours at least.
Yeah, and the wind gusts with this particular blizzard, they were approaching 50 miles per hour. And that was just a few days after we had the winds that were approaching 60 miles per hour. So it has been a windy stretch for us here in the Quad Cities, no doubt about that. And Sunday night into Monday, that wind was blowing around quite a bit of snow. So we did have the blizzard warning. Now, Gabe, our producer, he's been putting up different video from the blizzard, because we had a lot of that, people sending that in on Sunday night and Monday. And he's putting up the weather graphics right now again to go back to the blizzard warning definition. Anthony, I think you can talk about this picture. This is yours, right?
Yeah, I thought, boy, look how peaceful it is in downtown Rock Island. Now, this is before that 7 inches accumulated. This was when I first got in. Everything was snow covered at that point. It was just a few inches, but we definitely added more to it, and the windblown snow at that too.
And it was interesting too, I'll point this out. So I was here Sunday night, one of our MMJs, multimedia journalist, reporter, Riley Hemmer, she did live shots from right outside of the building during our Quad Cities News at 9. It was snowing, but the roads were just wet. It hadn't really started sticking on the roads just yet. We went back out to her 1 hour later, our Quad Cities News at 10 on Local 4, and it looked completely different outside. So things went downhill in a hurry Sunday night. And again, I was definitely sliding around quite a bit. But again, the difference over that span was pretty impressive. I was kind of surprised about that. Here's a stat kind of midway through the storm. You put this together early Monday morning.
Yeah, this was very interesting because, we talked about how the snow season started out robust with all that heavy snow at the end of November and early December. And then we hit that point from December 14th all the way through March 14th. We only had 1.9 inches of snow. So a trace in February, 1.7 inches in January, and we had 2/10 there at the last half of December. But for that 3-month stretch, less than 2 inches, and that Quad City total was what was reported Sunday in Moline, which is the official reporting station. So it's amazing, for that 90-day period, we had 2 inches, but we had 4 Sunday before it accumulated more on Monday.
Yeah, so that was the breakdown again. 4 inches Sunday, 3 inches Monday. Each of those days, actually, more snow than what we had during that 3-month stretch, which is normally the snowiest 3-month stretch that we would have for December, most of December anyway, and January and February. So yeah, we'd been in a drought, still in a little bit of a drought. We'll get you that map coming up here in just a little bit. But again, it had been a snow drought as well, and that finally came to an end in the middle of March. All right, well, that was all Sunday into Monday. So we're recording this like we do on Thursday afternoon, and most of that snow's already gone. We'll say 99% of it's going to be gone this weekend. I think even with the warm temperatures, some of the piles, they might hang around a few more days, but most of it's already gone.
Yeah, it's going to be those piles that are going to be still sticking there. And we talked about how you made your way home Sunday night, and I made my way in Monday morning. But just west of us, from around Iowa City all the way to Nebraska, Interstate 80 was closed for a period of time.
And Interstate 35 in Iowa was closed as well. So that's how you know it was really bad. Those roads were labeled basically impassable, travel not advised, and then eventually closed down. And we're not talking about county highways or even state highways. Those were the interstates in Iowa. That was bad. Almost all of Iowa was under a blizzard warning at one point, and then almost all of Wisconsin also, and then parts of Minnesota, the Dakotas, Illinois, and beyond. But people up in Wisconsin, they had even more snow than we did. Some of those places were approaching 2 feet of snow.
And it's that thing, it's that volatility of those March storms where, on the warm side, even here in Illinois, there were at least 6 to 8 tornadoes down across central Illinois on the warm sector of that storm Sunday.
Yeah.
And then we had the blizzard conditions here and west and north of here.
And we'll backtrack just a little bit. So it's been a little while now since we had that real bad tornado over around Kankakee and that huge hail. I think they have officially verified and confirmed now the largest hailstone ever recorded in Illinois happened earlier in March when we had those big storms over on that side of the state of Illinois. So again, I think that is official now. Biggest hailstone ever, more than 6 inches in diameter.
I'm glad someone was able to see that and not feel it.
Yeah, no kidding. That was something else. So again, that was very bad. And we'll see what the rest of our severe weather season holds for us here in the Quad Cities. But again, things have been pretty active here lately. Starting to melt off that snow already, obviously. Here's a look at the high temperatures. It was just last Monday, the 9th, 75. Then it was 65. And now we had the days Monday and Tuesday of this week, highs in the 20s. But we've already turned it around and we're going to be, I don't know, we'll say flirting with 80 degrees this weekend.
Yeah, that just goes to show, a lot can happen. So if you look at all the reds and the blues there, but you take the specific numbers, we are running above average on temperatures so far for the month of March, and with the warming trend that's underway now and into Saturday when it could, as Andy said, flirt with 80 degrees.
Yeah, here's a look at that weekend forecast. We're going with 78. You last updated that this morning, so it's going to be real close to 80. The record high, I think it's 82. I looked it up for
82.
Saturday, so that's, I'm going to say probably out of reach, but if things went a certain way, some lower 80s would be possible. Sunday, we'll have a few more clouds around. There's a slim chance for a few sprinkles. And 64, even though it's 14 degrees cooler than Saturday, that is still way above normal for mid to late March.
It definitely is. Even on the other side of that, the longer term models are showing that the above average temperatures will continue. So it's pretty safe at this point to say that March is going to be a warmer than average month.
Yeah, especially with weather coming up this weekend. The warmest temperature, you saw it on the calendar a second ago, was that record high on March 9th. It was 75. For now, I think that'll change though, because again, the huge warm up does continue late this week. Close to 80 like we've been talking this weekend, specifically Saturday in the Quad Cities. And Friday, that's not half bad either. We're going to have a high near 70 with sunshine. It's going to make it kind of hard to stay inside and watch some of the basketball games when you have weather like this.
I know a lot of people, they don't want those brackets to be busted, so they're going to be inside watching it regardless of how nice it is outside.
Yeah, a lot of the teams that are, people around here cheer for the Iowa men and women in their tournaments. Same for Illinois, same for Iowa State. So yeah, there'll be plenty of basketball watching coming up here. And again, it's not easy to do that. You almost feel like you're being lazy or wasting time if you're inside, but man, look at this, 70, then 78 and 64. Then it gets a little bit cooler, but temperatures by later next week back into the mid 60s. So yeah, feeling pretty confident March will end up above normal.
Yeah, and only one of those days, that 50 on Monday, is below average, because even that 56 is going to be above average for that date.
Yeah, this is going to be pretty nice. I'll spend some of my time this Saturday inside volunteering, Quad City Animal Welfare Center. Love those folks. That's where I got my dog Precious from, and they still help me out with Precious quite a bit. So the least I can do is do some volunteering for them. It's their trivia night Saturday in Milan, and so we'll be inside there. I'll try to sell a bunch of 50-50 raffle tickets. This is one of those fundraisers, Anthony, that once they open up the tickets and the tables, it sells out in, I think, less than 30 minutes. It's a bunch of regulars, but we raise thousands of dollars for Quad City Animal Welfare Center. A great place here in the Quad Cities. Some good shelters around here for sure, multiple of them.
And they do such a great job. When I was a kid, I used to watch The Price is Right, and I didn't really understand why Bob Barker every day was talking about spaying and neutering. But whenever you see all of these abandoned animals, or these animals that they take in and they house until they can find a home for it, it's a great cause, and it doesn't surprise me that they sell out so quickly.
Yeah, no kidding. They do it twice a year, and again, it sells out like that each and every time. Bob Barker, once I was at I think it was the first time I was in Southern California, we went to The Price is Right.
Okay.
I didn't get called up or anything like that. But what I remember about it most, and this would have been in the late 90s, I think, Bob Barker, like in between, like when they would have the games going, then they need to get ready for the next game. So there's 3 or 4 or 5 minutes or whatever it is while they kind of get everything set up. Bob Barker would just sit there and entertain the crowd, just ad lib, off the cuff. He would just be doing kind of like crowd work almost, we'll say. And that was for me the most memorable part of that. That guy was so good. And the stands, it's kind of hard to tell. There's probably 100 or 150 people who, might get called down to be the next contestant on The Price is Right. So there's about 100 or 150 people. That guy was legendary the way he could entertain the crowd.
Boy, those old time game show hosts, they knew what they were doing. Bob Barker, Gene Rayburn, Match Game.
Yeah.
Saying some of the naughtiest
Which
things.
Dawson was it on the Family
Richard
Feud?
Dawson.
Because there's, I think, a Len Dawson. I think he was a quarterback in the
Okay.
NFL. I always get him confused. Richard Dawson.
Richard Dawson, he was the kisser.
Yeah, was he in an old movie, The Running Man, with Arnold Schwarzenegger?
I'm not sure, but I would say he probably did.
And he played like a similar, like a game show host. I think that was him. Oh, that's good stuff. All right, The Price is Right. You know what? We've got a little extra time to fill. My other Price is Right story. When I was growing up, I went to PM kindergarten. Well, I just started growing up. I was like 5 years old or whatever. So I didn't go in until around 12 or so. So my mom and I, it was like a tradition. We still talk about it to this day. I would watch The Price is Right. I'd have my breakfast or whatever. And then right before the Showcase Showdown, I'd run upstairs and brush my teeth, come back down, watch the Showcase Showdown, and that's how I knew when that ended it was time to run out and catch the bus to kindergarten. Oh, just a few years ago.
Just a few years ago.
Right?
Right.
Okay. All right. We're going to take a quick break here. When we come back, we do have another drought update. I know you've already noticed that this morning. We're going to talk about that and whatever else pops up on the iPad. We'll do that here in just a couple of moments on and off the radar.
Welcome back to On and Off the Radar. I'm meteorologist Anthony Peoples with Chief Meteorologist Andy McCrae, and we've talked a lot about the blizzard, the snow part of our season, but now we're heading into the warmer season.
Yeah, and one good thing, with the 7 to 8 inches of snow, there was some moisture in there. For a lot of us, it was the equivalent of more than a half an inch of rain, much needed rain. So we can add that to the tally for March. Started to see a little relief here this month. Average rain for the whole month is 2.62. There's a good chance we end up above normal for March. Technically right now, though, we'd still be below if we didn't get any more rain. Right now we're at 2.29 for the month.
That's right. And you go back all of these months. Back in July, we had that astounding 9.3 inches of rain, caused quite a bit of flooding around the Quad Cities area. And then all of a sudden, we went into this drought situation with September less than an inch of rain, November less than an inch of rain, and that was with that heavy snow late November, melted down. It still did not accumulate a lot. In January and February, we started the month with less than a half, or the year with less than a half inch of rain.
Yeah, so this is a good turnaround here. It's kind of what we needed. Still a long ways to go, though, as far as the drought is considered. Here's the drought monitor from last week, when basically the entire area was in at least a moderate drought. And Anthony, you were already talking this on our Quad Cities News this morning. Here's the update for this week.
And
voila, not much change at all.
Not much change, but there was a little bit. I mean, you still see the moderate and the severe numbers there, but you can see that yellow from Rockford move over a little bit closer because there was a little bit of relief. Now the percentages have gone down a little bit. That's something you're not seeing there, but keep in mind too that this cuts off on Tuesday for this update to come in on Thursday. So, we did get that moisture from the blizzard in there. So I'm afraid with the fact that we don't have a lot of rain in our forecast for the upcoming week, that next week's drought situation could worsen.
Yeah, there's a chance we really don't see any precip over the next 7 days. So this is a product here that we sometimes show. It comes from the Weather Prediction Center. That's a particular branch of the National Weather Service. And it updates a couple times throughout the day. But here's the latest run of it. And what they're considering anyway, in the next 7 days, this would have us bone dry, and that would not be good for the drought. I know we're going to have some mud around here, so maybe it's not exactly dry, but as far as extra rain goes, not a ton of that coming up. But with all the melting, still some puddles and everything outside, and there'll be some of that here in the near future. So again, not a lot of rain here anytime soon. And the rain chances are, well, when we do have them, they're pretty low, obviously. Not a surprise here, but we're looking at a slim chance for some rain Sunday. But even if we get anything at all, it's likely to be very light.
That's right. That those percentages, there's a chance on Sunday. A cold front's going to move through, drop our temperatures back just a little bit from that 78 or 80 degrees on Saturday, but then a slight chance on Tuesday evening as another system makes its way in from the northwest. However, just because there's a chance of rain, it's not going to accumulate much, because we saw, you might get a few 100ths of an inch if you do get a shower, if you're lucky. So that's not going to help out any.
Yeah, so that is the latest on where we stand as far as the drought goes and everything. All right, so about our podcast, we've been doing it again for a couple of months now. Every once in a while it looks a little bit different. That's mostly depending on what Gabe decides to do each week. But here in the near future, we're looking at it right now. There's a whole bunch of brand new equipment, new table. We're going to have new cameras, new mics. So once the engineers get all this put together, it's going to look different again. And then once we get settled into that new system, it'll be the new home. I'm sure it'll look like that for some time to come. But yeah, there's a bunch of nice stuff over there. Kind of looking forward to it.
It is, and you said during the first and second show that the show would be evolving and looking a little bit different, and we still look the same, but the background and the sets around us looks different. So we welcome the creativity and all of the new upgrades.
Yeah, and so this is always available, obviously, on the RQC Plus streaming app. Some of our bosses, we want to have even more local content on there, so I told them, you know what, I'm going to start up another podcast, and it's actually just going to be talking with people from around the Quad Cities, just different conversations. Maybe it'll be with some people who you are familiar with their faces. Maybe it'll just be some random person that I think has a good story to tell. So I have no idea how that's going to go. I'm a trained meteorologist. I'm not a journalist or something, but I like talking with people. You do too. I like hearing their stories, getting to know them and stuff. So yeah, we'll start that up in another month or so. So we'll see how that goes. Again, I don't know if people are going to be willing to come in and chat with me or not, but hopefully we can get some people to do it at least. So yeah, that's something else that we will be doing. All the other shows here, A Quest for Something More. That's the kind of Dungeons and Dragons theme. Those guys are still going strong, so that's pretty good. And then QC Crime Alert. Gabe does that one as well. I think that's the name of it. I always forget. QC Crime Watch, my bad. No need to edit it out or anything. We could just leave it in. It's fine. But that's Linda Cook and Sharon Wren. And yeah, they have a bunch of good stuff too. I feel like when it comes to crime in the Quad Cities, Linda might be like at about the top of the list for people who know, these stories these things that have happened over the last, it's decades now, honestly.
And we are lucky in the sense to have those two great ladies, because they have worked in newspaper for so many years here in the Quad Cities area. So they've covered these stories in depth. They know the history, they know the background, and to be able to just sit in the world of podcast and be able to talk about something that we may have heard about, like that name sounds familiar. Oh, that's what that was. They know all about the history.
Yeah, they can just rattle a bunch of stuff off. It's pretty impressive. All right, so that's a little bit about, again, the podcast. It'll maybe look different next week. I'm not sure. It'll either be next week or the following week. So we will see how that goes. All right, any plans for the weekend? I mentioned Quad City Animal Welfare Center, watching some basketball for me. What are you and Xanadu going to be up to?
I'm going to try to spend as much time outdoors on Friday after I'm done work Friday morning and to Saturday, because, we've had such, I don't want to say unpredictable, because we know how to predict it, but the weather has been just very up and down here lately.
Yeah, and this is some weather to take advantage of coming up this weekend for sure. So you're still doing a lot of walking. Are you still doing the thing? Do you read while you're walking? I've always been impressed by that.
Well, when I was back in the central Illinois, Decatur, I had the 4-mile walk around Lake Decatur, which was perfect and easy. But I waited a couple of months once I got to Moline, because the sidewalks, some of them are uneven and broken. So I wanted to get familiar with the lay of the land first. But
good call.
And you know what? I gained 10 pounds when I first moved here, because I was eating and not walking as much. But now that I'm back to walking, 5 pounds of it out the door. So good. It does work.
Inspiring, because I've been slacking big time lately. So I've noticed some of my suits are a little tighter than they should be. So I'm going to actually try to get back into that as well. I had a stretch a few years ago where I did not miss. I would go at least 3 miles every day. This is when I'd go along Duck Creek. Love that place, love that path. And I would go at least 3 miles a day. I mean, like 99% of the time it was about 6 miles. But I had a stretch where I did not miss, and it was approaching 500 days. That was rain or shine or sleet or snow. I went almost 500 days without missing a day. And then I missed a day. A whole bunch of stuff went wrong on that particular day, including my Bengals losing the Super Bowl. But yeah, that was a good stretch. I got to get back into that.
It makes a difference. I mean, if you say, "Oh, I can't walk 3 miles," walk 1 mile if
Yes.
you can. 1
Yeah.
mile in addition to what you normally do during the day, it makes a difference. You can have that extra cheesecake. Or
Yeah,
whatever.
and I'll mix in a little bit of running. I'll do a couple of 5Ks, but I don't want to do too much of that because I just feel like it would be bad for the knees. And I want to be able to do it just about every day.
Well, wait, you just said kindergarten was a few years ago. What are
Yeah.
you worried about your knees for?
Yeah, it must be bad genes or something. I don't know what it is. But all right, I think we're just about out of time. Thanks again for joining us, Anthony. Any last words for this week's episode? And I think next week it might be you and Sean too, by the way.
Okay, I just say get out and enjoy the weather. We always appreciate you checking in. If you have any ideas for us, want us
Yeah.
to look up something for you, like, hey, did it do this? And we'll look it up for you.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. If you're whoever is still watching right now, I have some free gift certificates for a free meal from Checkers.
Okay.
So if you are watching this, if you watched it all the way through, I will mail it to you. You don't have to do anything other than send me an email or look me up on Facebook. Say, hey, I watched the whole thing. I want my free meal from Checkers, and I will send you one of those. You know what? The first 3 people who do that,
Good
I'll
deal.
send out a free coupon to you. So thanks for watching, everybody. We'll be back again next week with another wonderful episode of On and Off the Radar.